So I'm here with Michael Crow. I just got done interviewing his wife, Judy. So we're going to hear Michael's side of the story. And you were introduced to me from Patty. I've done her interview. And she said, Michael's a math genius. And I remember I used to love math when I was a kid. I couldn't relate to people at all. So I used to sit in schoolroom when everyone else at recess, and my teacher would give me math problems. So I used to love math. But how in the world did you make a career out of it? I gotta hear this.
Okay. So I was always good in math, but I really didn't love it, but I was just naturally good at it. And so, like, some of the other kids would always come to me for help with math, and that's what I was doing. And that's how I operated until my sophomore year in high school. Now, I always got straight A's in math. I was good at it, but I didn't really enjoy it. And then my sophomore year in high school, we had Euclidean geometry. And that's when I fell in love with math.
Why is that? What clicked in your mind for that? Because I only know what that is.
Because up until then, it was always, basically, adding numbers together, word problems, and a bunch of calculation. But in geometry, it is theorem and proof. Proving that such and such is true, and trying to figure out the logical steps to prove a particular theorem is true. And we did it with construction. So you had a straight edge and a compass. And with those two tools, your job was to prove all the theorems of Euclidean mathematics. And I just thought that was the greatest thing since sliced bread. And I just thought, that whole sophomore year just turned my life around, because I had Euclidean geometry, world history, and biology. And up until that point in time, history was always people, dates, places, and events. But in that sophomore year in high school, we went from that to kind of trying to understand what was the causative factors that made those events happen, that caused history, the movement through history. And that fascinated me. And up until then, science was my least favorite subject, because it was all, here's a little bit of this, and a little bit of that, and a little bit of this, and isn't all this interesting, which my reaction was always no. And
no. Don't ask me for my opinion.
Right. But sophomore year in high school, it was 9 months of class on biology, how living organisms functioned, starting with biochemistry and ending with the ecology of the biosphere. And they had me hooked. I just thought that was the most amazing thing, because I spent the entire rest of my life studying complex system and system interactions. And that was my first exposure to a complex system, how living things operated. And so I had that, I had geometry, I had history. I was completely hooked. And I remember in my sophomore year, I'm going to college, I'm getting a PhD, I am going for the gusto. So I had my plans for college, and I don't know how much you want to get into that. But
yeah, go ahead and share. Go ahead and share a little bit.
I was interested in, and the only one I got into was my last choice, and that's because I test really poorly. Those tests. So the SAT test, at that point in time, the SAT test weighed very heavily in your college admission, and I did not do well on my SAT test. I was a straight A student, but did very poorly on my SAT test, so I didn't get into any of my top schools. So I went to San Diego State University instead, which I was just totally demoralized, that kind of seeing myself as a total failure going there. But as I look back on it now, that was the best possible thing that could have happened.
Why is that?
Because San Diego State is a terrific school, which I had no idea at the time. And it didn't have a large graduate program, which means the teachers actually care about the undergraduates.
Oh, okay.
Because I later went to graduate school at the University of Washington, which was fabulous. but I'd hate to be an undergraduate there because they have all these top-rate professors, and the professors are always working with their graduate students. But at San Diego State, the focus was all on their undergraduates, which was terrific.
Wonderful.
And secondly, because like my first choice for college was Stanford, which is really difficult to get into. And if you go there, it turns out one of my roommates later on in my career went to Stanford. He says, it's terrible because everybody there is top of their high school class. And you have all these hyperachievers competing with each other. And I went to San Diego State, and basically I had no competition.
So you're just the top of the class then?
I'm sorry, what?
You were just the top of the class.
I was the top of the class, and the professors noticed.
Wonderful.
And they didn't have graduate students; they just treated me like I was something special, and that would not have happened at any of those other universities. And so I really stood out, and the professors noticed, and they took care of me, and they noticed, hey, you're good in math, you love biology, we've got a career for you. And they said, you need to talk to Professor Collier. And he was the head of something called the Systems Ecology Program, which was understanding how ecosystems work from a mathematical basis and simulating it on a computer. And he explained how that whole thing worked, and I thought I had died and gone to heaven. I just said, this is me. And that was it. And I was fully dedicated to becoming one of the top systems ecologists in the country for the next 11 years.
Wow.
My undergraduate, went to graduate school for 6 years, never finished my dissertation, which is a whole other story, but was in graduate school for 6 years and just happy as a clam at high tide in graduate school. Just the ability to just focus and learn and work on computers and mathematics, and I was just in heaven. I got my first job, and it was working in my field of interest for the National Marine Fisheries Service, and just that worked out great. They loved me. I was the top performer at the laboratory. And then I decided I wanted to switch careers.
Really? Why is that?
Go ahead.
Why is that?
Well, it turns out that's a fairly common thing, is that people find their passion, they go, they're working in their job, and then they realize there's something that's just not quite ideal about it. Alison Armstrong has a book called the Queen's Code, where she talks about that, and how men have kind of want to establish their kingdom here on Earth, so to speak. And as they're doing that, they realize, I really don't want to do this for the rest of my life. There's something wrong with it. And the example in her book, she's talking about a general contractor who builds houses. And he's got his own business, and things are going great. He's making lots of money, and he's not happy because he doesn't like the houses he's building. So he changes his career such that he's building a different type of style of house and works that out. And now he's great. Now, in my case, so I had my dream job, but I realized that I'm doing all this great stuff with ecology, but it's tough modeling living systems. It's just hard, especially in fisheries. It's hard to get the data you need to actually establish anything for real. And secondly, as in my area, your options are academia or government. And I was working for the government, and I really decided I really don't like working for the federal government.
Interesting.
That's not where I wanted to be.
Okay.
And thirdly, I was living in Miami, Florida. We had to move to Miami, Florida for the job, and I was kind of stuck. If I stayed there, I'd have to stay in Miami, Florida. And for a variety of reasons, we did not like living in Miami. So we made a move to come back to Seattle, Washington, and I'd work as an engineer for the Boeing company.
How interesting.
And so I switched from biology to engineering. And it was just and that was a real scary time for me.
I bet.
And what saved me is it turns out that my coworkers at Miami were all formerly working for defense contractors, engineering firms like Boeing.
Okay.
And I was sharing with them why I wanted to go to work for Boeing, and sharing with them how my fears and concerns. And they just looked at me and said, "Mike, you're going to do great."
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
It's a good analogy, and it worked great. Now, what's cute is that all the other engineers that I was working with, they had gotten their training either on spring and mass systems or electric circuits. And it turns out my training in biology prepared me to do that work much better than their training in engineering.
No kidding. That's amazing.
And I came in, and I came in instantly as top performer, and they promoted me in record time. And I became a lead engineer and started leading and teaching other people how to do it. Because what happens, my background in ecological simulation actually prepared me better for doing the type of work we were doing in mission operations than the traditional engineering training. And I wound up teaching the other engineers how to do this because the mathematics I had learned was a slightly different emphasis than what they had done and was more applicable. And the computer simulation techniques I had learned was more applicable than what they had learned in engineering school. And so I became the top dog, and I became a lead engineer. And that was a new experience for me because up until then, I had only been an individual performer. So now I had to lead others in software development. Well, what did that mean? So I started doing off-hours training in software engineering and software engineering management and computer programming and software design. And that happened just at the time when there was this new concept called object-oriented programming and object modeling, which was brand new to software engineering. And it was developed based on a concept called a computer language called Simula, which is not very well known, but the concepts of that developed in it. And it turns out in graduate school that was my expertise. And that's what we had used in the ecological modeling and when I was in graduate school during my PhD dissertation. So I just took to that like a duck to water and became the Boeing company expert in doing that. And then Boeing has a program called the Engineering Technical Fellowship, Boeing Engineering Technical Fellowship, which is where the program that they put all their top engineers in. So they look through their engineers, they identify the top performers, and they promote them into this fellowship called Boeing Engineering Technical Fellowship. So in 1995, I got put into the Boeing Technical Fellowship, and I've been there ever since. And I told them what I wanted, and they said, "Done deal."
No way. So you got to name your own price.
Yep. And I've been working past my planned retirement date now for 5 years, and having the time of my life.
Oh, so you're still working?
I'm still working full time.
And you're just happy as can be.
I'm happy as can be.
That's great, because I looked at the photos that you guys sent me and I go, there's a happy man. That's exciting. That is so exciting.
Now, I want to point out that when they asked me, what do you want? I said, I want 3 things. 1, I work full-time virtual. I never walk into a Boeing property again. 2, I only do what I think is fun. If it's not fun, I don't do it. And 3, I don't do anything that's stressful.
Good move.
And they said, done. You got it.
That's exciting. Do you know how many very few people ever get to a point in their life that they can set the rules? That's exciting.
It is. And so right now, I have a meeting with my boss every 2 weeks. And basically it goes like this. Well, Mike, what did you work on? Well, this is what I wound up doing, and it basically, it's literally, I come in to work in the morning, and I basically sit down and say, okay, well, what sounds like the most fun thing to do this morning?
Really?
And I do that, and then every 2 weeks I tell my boss what I've decided to do. And the great thing is, what I think is fun and Boeing engineering priorities are aligning really, really well.
Really?
And
Boy.
they just keep it up. You're doing great.
Talk about favor. You've got major favor in your life.
It's just awesome. Now they do kind of reassign me, give me assignments every now and then.
Right.
And I look at it and say, yeah, that sounds like fun. And one of my favorite stories. So I spent 2 years working on this one project, and it was one thing where and I was having a time of my life because I was learning all sorts of stuff, but the project itself was failing. But I was learning like crazy, so I was having great time. And my boss's boss said, "Okay, new year, we need a plan. We need a plan for Michael." And what I was working on was something called Design Manager, and it says he can do anything he wants, so long as it's not design managed. And so my boss, we had a meeting. My boss says, "All right, Mike, you have to do something else. This is what I'd like you to do." And he laid out a plan, which was all had to do with computer simulation, which is my passion, what I wanted to do. And he says, "Oh, that sounds great. That's wonderful. I'd love to do that. But before we finish the meeting, I want to tell you about an idea I've come up with." And I came up with an idea that I've been pushing around. And he said, "Oh, I like that. Forget the simulation stuff. Do that instead."
That's wonderful. So I have to ask you, you put it here in the questions. I think it's a wonderful thing. Now, you've started off and you ended up with just total favor, dream job. You just don't want to retire. A lot of people are starting off their careers, have gone through multiple careers. Do you have any advice for young people who are trying to find their path? Because Normandy Park you've got tons of engineers there. So do you have any advice?
Yeah. So, and what I'm going to give, every time someone that we know graduates from high school, we have a standard present that we give them all. And it's called the Do What You Are book. It's a book you get off Amazon, Do What You Are. And it's based on the Myers-Briggs test. And so now I just kind of I had the good fortune to just kind of fall into my dream job. But I know a lot of people struggle. And so this is, when I think in 1982, I was introduced to the Myers-Briggs test. And so I took the Myers-Briggs test and and it's based on putting you into one of 16 personality types. And then based on your personality types, it has careers you might like. And so I took the test and I read the career advice, and it just described exactly what I was doing.
Wow.
On the internet, and it'll come right up, and they have tests there also. But my wife just brought me the book. It's Paul Tiger, Tieger, Barbara Barron, Barron, and Kelly Tiger are the three authors. We're now on I think this is the 6th edition now that they've got.
That's exciting. Well, that's absolutely wonderful advice, because as a young man, and even as I got older and stuff, I asked myself what type of person you are. So having a test that you can right out of the chute define who you are and define good direction, what a wonderful thing.
Yeah, this is the best thing I could advise, and it's just like, and the money quote is, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you so much for this interview. I think this is going to be very, very helpful to a lot of people. And if you are connected to some university or something like that, I would encourage you to share this link after I publish it. I think it'd be very, very helpful to a lot of people out there. I mean, I'm truly, I really believe that.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and have yourself a wonderful day.
And you too. Bye.
Bye.